I would like to introduce you to our fantastic cast. So we have Liam, Grace, Naomi, Molly, Janet and Caitlin, and we are also joined by Nina Lemon, who is the artistic director of Peer Productions, and she is also the writer of Hidden. Nina, do you want to say hello and maybe say a bit about Peer Productions and Hidden?
Thanks, Christine, and thank you so much for agreeing to host this. It's always great when we have lots of talented people we can draw upon. So thank you very much for helping us with this. Peer Productions is a unique charity that works with young people to develop new plays to support young people's well-being and mental health particularly. We are based in the Southeast, and normally pre-COVID we would tour our work to schools and colleges in Surrey, Hampshire, Berkshire, that kind of area. Whilst the pandemic was horrible for everyone and particularly for our industry, it meant that we had to work differently. So we decided to create a digital version of this production, and that's really given us an opportunity to try and work with and to reach many, many more young people who would just be too far away for us to tour to. So we further developed the work, we reduced the cast so that they could isolate together, because we've normally done this, there are 25 characters in this play, so it's quite hard going for 6 of you, so thank you guys for doing that. So we reduced the cast and we developed more resources so that it can be used for both PSHE and drama. So alongside this production, there's an extensive teacher's pack and also an interactive student guide. And we're hoping that we can reach a far wider range of young people nationally and internationally.
God, I've done it, guys. I'm the first one to talk whilst muted. It's okay now if anyone else does it. It's not embarrassing because I've just done it. So what I was saying is, next up on our creative team, we have the fantastic Valentina Rosati, who is the resident director at Peer Productions, and she also directed Hidden, and she also created the music for the production. Valentina, would you like to say hello?
Hello everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. Such a pleasure to see all the cast, Nina, and thank you very much, Christine, to host these Q&As. My first one ever on Zoom, so first time. I'm very excited. I'm so proud about the work that this company have done, and so yeah. It was an incredible experience, especially because I was in isolation for the cast for 2 weeks. So we lived together, me and 6 teenagers. That was really, really intense and beautiful. And under the pandemic, so very special and unique moment.
Amazing. Cool, thank you. And we're also joined by Karen Hall, who is a senior drama teacher, a lecturer at in drama education at the University of Sussex, and also a member of Peer Productions board. Karen, do you want to say hello?
Hi everybody. First of all, well done cast. It was absolutely outstanding. It's really moving, absolutely brilliant interpretation of the play. It was excellent, and you know, sending all my love and congratulations to all of you. It's really lovely to be here for this webinar. I first worked with Peer Productions, I don't even know how long ago it was now, but have been working with Nina and Peer Productions for a long time now, partly obviously in my role as a trustee, but also Peer Productions have brought plays into my school for about 5 or 6 years now. So we're kind of very familiar with the work, and more importantly, the kind of impact that the work has on young people in schools. So it's a real privilege, to be here this evening, and also to be part of the Peer Productions family. Yeah, so that's it from me.
Cool, thank you. Well, we have loads of questions, so I'll just dive straight in. So I wanted to ask you, Nina, why you wrote Hidden, but also someone asked, when you were researching, was there anything that really shocked or surprised you? if you think back to your research process?
I wrote Hidden, the first draft of Hidden, the first version, and it has changed a little bit since then. I wrote it about 5 years ago, and each year we send out surveys and we talk to teachers and we talk to young people, and we try and find what are those topics that people want to talk about, and that might be really difficult to talk about in a school setting. And the topic of self-harm just kept coming up again and again, and I kept kind of putting it to the bottom of the pile. And I did that because I was really worried about it. I was really desperately worried that we could risk making the situation first. And, you know, our tagline has always been make plays change lives, but implicit in that is change them for the better. And I think that if you acknowledge that theatre is a really powerful tool, then you have to acknowledge that it could be quite a dangerous little tool as well. So I was really concerned about it, but it kept coming up and it kept coming up. And in my own practice working with young people, I was seeing more and more young people who wanted to talk about these issues, who were experiencing these issues. And there was a lot in the news at the time. So I decided to try and be brave and try and find a way forward. And I worked with several mental health specialists, particularly Dr. Peaky Knight-Smith. And we worked really closely together. So individual lines of the text were kind of batted back and forth between us to make sure that it's not possible to make a piece of theatre that never triggers anyone in ever, but that it wasn't designed to be that, and that it was instead something that would trigger people to get help if they needed it, rather than triggering self-harming behaviour. And the other really interesting thing I discovered in the research, which astounded me, I talked to a psychiatrist called Dr. Dennis Orgren, and his research was about what happens to young people when the self-harm is so bad that they have to go to A&E. And he was discovering that basically they're assessed by a duty psychiatrist, and then it's either a case of they are a risk or they're not a risk. Now, normally once that behaviour is over, they're not a risk. So they're sent home and referred to further services. And a tiny percentage of those people actually ever turn up for that referral. So his research was specifically on how could we change that. And he discovered the one thing that his research showed was that if we didn't focus on the self-harm, if the psychiatrist instead empowered the young person and said, where do you want to break this cycle, and chose perhaps a different point, because obviously we want the self-harm to stop, but if we just say stop, 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 that's quite frightening because people are self-harming for a reason. Obviously that's unhealthy, but in saying stop, we're not acknowledging that it is serving a purpose for them in that moment. And so it was about this cycle, and that's something that I talked a lot to Valentina about in the play, because it's embedded in the text of the play. But how can we look at this kind of cyclical nature? And by asking young people, where do you want to break that cycle? And just briefly, the example he gave was a young man who'd been self-harming, so was no longer able to go and play football because he was worried about changing and people seeing his legs that had scars. And so the focus of his next session was, okay, so how are you going to play football again? And he discovered that by asking this instead, a huge, I can't remember the exact percentage, but a huge percentage more then went to get more help. So that's something that I tried to weave in. So in terms of, I think it was Kirsty's question, that was the big thing that I learned, that I tried to sort of weave into the play.
Amazing. And Valentina, so how did you take that and sort of use your direction and to put it into the play? I noticed that you talked about, Nina, the sort of the cycle and when do we break the cycle, and I noticed that you used the trees as in a cyclical way. Was that on purpose?
Absolutely, it was. We decided to use live trees for several reasons, and we put this tree in the carols that we move around the stage, and of course the moment, the lyric moment that was support the three moments that they characters decided to start to speak about their problems are central And so we create with the music and with the action this kind of mood, repetition, try to bring out the main question when you want to break the cycle.
And I think that really came across, and also that symbolic nature of a tree is sort of like it's maybe blossom, or it's losing its leaves, it's growing new leaves. That sort of like we can push forward, we can move forward from this. I thought was really really came across. It was really touching. Cast, you played 25 characters between you. That is incredible. I was so impressed about how quickly you went from one character who might have been about 45 to maybe a 7-year-old. How did you go about playing so many characters and switching between them? Liam, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can start. I think what was very key that we wanted to make sure we got was the different worlds. And so once you were swapping into each world, you knew exactly that you were becoming a fragment of each character's imagination. So when you were going into Sophia's world, when I was playing either the dad or the psychiatrist, I was able to quickly change like my thought process, because I knew I was entering that world as a fragment of Sophia's imagination. And that was kind of how we did it. We were making sure to make those three worlds very clear and succinct.
Mm-hmm. And you did that, I noticed, through costume as well. Does someone want to tell us about the different costumes that you had?
So we were split up into like 3 worlds. So Sophia's world was purple, Tash's world was green, and it's lost me, but oh my god,
red. It was red.
Right. Matt's world was red. There we go. So a huge part of what we did was we used minimal costume that was easy to get in and out of, but once you're wearing, say, a jacket, the blazers for Tasha's world were really important to say, right, I'm in school now. And also with us playing parts of their imagination, it was really key to think that as much as you're performing a fully rounded character, you are a marker, but only through the eyes of the main character. Mm-hmm. So characters like Big Baz, we were just playing caricatures, and it was very important to sort of put that person in the right mindset. Right, I'm wearing this jacket, I am this character.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose that was so important when like a character was remembering like a bully, because someone who is a bully in your memory is very probably quite a large character that made a really big impact on the 3 main characters. Do any of you, maybe like Molly, want to talk about playing lots of different characters? How did you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just again, with all the costume and that definitely helped when actually doing it, changing through the characters, especially into Pandora. As soon as I had that scarf on and I was flicking it around, I felt the sass within me, and that was really easy to play. And as you said, being the bully, I took on that over the top, just really annoying sort of character to represent that. And then it was just going, actually practicing switching between characters was just kind of what Liam said, going into the world. But definitely I played a lot less characters than what Naomi had to play, where she was going from different characters and loads of different in the worlds, and yeah, that's quite impressive.
Such a good skill, it really is. So someone asked, how was working with Valentina changed your practice as an actor? So I suppose, how did this show shape you as actors? What did you learn?
I think for me, working with Valentina definitely changed my way of sort of thinking about characters and thinking about the way you rehearse to play, because before we started Hidden, the way I'd always rehearse to play was just get into the rehearsal room and start from start to finish and rehearse it through, and then add costume in it right at the end. Whereas with Valentina, we actually got all the costume together right at the beginning, and we had the costume all the way through, as it was such a pivotal part of the play with all the different characters, and we added lots of elements in to begin with, so we really knew what we were doing within the play, and we really got to grips with all of the trees and felt comfortable and had a connection with everything that we were doing within the scenes. And so this was a very sort of pivotal part of Valentina's practice, I felt, and that's something that changed the way I rehearse, because I actually found that I really enjoyed that way of rehearsing as I got to know all of the props and staging a lot better.
Yeah, it's such a wise thing to do, because it's always the worst thing when you get to a tech day and suddenly you've got 3 live trees and you've never worked with them.
Definitely.
So definitely great that you have used them from the start. So we had another question that was, how was the filming experience for you all? Caitlin, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, for me, I know I've never worked in front of a camera before, and it was a weird experience, you know, having these little iPhones following us around the stage, and it was a bit not off-putting, but just strange, because I didn't know whether to sometimes look out into the audience, because you don't have an audience there, and you're used to working off the audience and receiving the energy from the audience. So we really had to work with each other to keep the energy up and really, you know, work off each other and stay in the moment when you're having these cameras like put in your face or walking around you. You've really got to stay in the moment. So, but it was a really cool experience, and I'm really happy that we got to do something like that.
Was it kind of distracting having quite a few people, I'm sure they were very socially distanced from you, around you with cameras and sort of like working out if the shots are okay, whilst you're especially performing such often quite deep emotions, you're dealing with really sort of hard-hitting topics? How did you focus when all of that was going on?
Well, it was quite difficult at first, but once, you know, you got used to it, you just had to think, they're not there. You're in the moment. Just don't worry about what they're doing. They know what they're doing. We know what we're doing. So just kind of block them out and just try and stay in the moment as much as you can. But once you just got past them and you just accepted the fact that they're there, you were just, it was fine, really, and it was a really enjoyable experience.
Great, and such a useful experience now, because theatre has changed this past year, hasn't it? We are more open to film and putting things online, so I can imagine it's such a great experience. Nina, do you think you have more plans to film your other plays in the future?
I see that someone's also asked a very deep question about the pandemic and the place of digital theatre moving forward, and it would be very easy to go, oh, we don't need it because we can just film everything and we can reach a bigger audience that way, and I'm not ever going to say that, because I think something magical does happen when you are live in a room with real people that you cannot replicate. What we do here is something different and also great, but it is different. We are planning to film some other productions and some new productions going forwards, and we've just invested in some kit so that we can learn better how to do that. We were really lucky. We worked with an amazing company called Serpent Films, who we learned a huge amount from, and another company who specialise in filming with iPhones. So the whole show was filmed using iPhone 11s with inside out broadcasting. But we learned a lot from doing that. So we've just invested in our own kit. So we're going to start trying to film ourselves. That'll be a slow process. The main thing for me is there's just an opportunity to reach a far wider audience, which is just not physically possible. You cannot tour to every school, but you can possibly offer a digital package to every school. So that, and also for young people who maybe aren't in school, not just for COVID related reasons, but for all sorts of reasons why young people maybe are not in that mainstream environment, it just gives us another way to reach people. So I think that's really important, but it's not a replacement for, it's a rather nice added extra.
Nice. And Karen, so you are a teacher who has had Hidden as a live production come to your school. How did your students engage with Hidden?
Well, part of the process of having peer productions in a school is that it's not a case of, okay, we're going to bring some actors in and we're going to perform and you're going to have a lovely time and off we go. It's much more of a process than that. So peer productions work really hard to make sure that the schools are aware of what the play is about and about the content. So it means you can do, it's like Nina said earlier on, I mean, theatre is so powerful and it is a tool, but there is that element of danger to it. But it means that you can do that work beforehand, you know, so letters go out to parents, so it's explaining, you know, what the content is about. And what was really important for us, I think it was on the second time that Hidden came into school, we made sure that our safeguarding lead of the school was actually in the production to watch it along with the students. Because, you know, the first time that we had Hidden in, it did lead to some disclosures, which was fantastic because it meant that those students were then getting the support that they need. On one level, the students engage with it because it's a great play and there are moments of comedy, you know, like Janet was talking about those caricatured kind of teenage characters, you know, they can quite engage with and find funny. Then you've got those moments, you know, of real kind of heartache and tragedy, you know, that they can also relate to, not even if not necessarily their own lives, but to the world around them. So it works on lots of levels. I think because Peer Productions isn't a theatre company that comes in and says, okay, we're going to do a play about Henry VIII in theatre and off we go. You know, it's much more it's much more powerful than that. It's much more interactive than that. So our students have always engaged with the plays really well, always enjoyed them, but it does encourage a space to talk, and it's about, you know, as a school you have to be more receptive to that. You have to kind of create those spaces to make sure that it is safe. So we do start with kind of like you know, we talk to the students as an audience and say, this is what you're going to see, remember, here are the key people in the school that you need to speak to, and so on. So, you know, it does feel very, very safe as an experience. I mean, I think we're in our 6th year now of having peer productions in. So if students weren't engaging for, you know, that amount of time, then it wouldn't work. But it works year on year. It's really, really powerful.
Did it again. And talking about safeguarding, I'm quite interested to hear from the actors. So how did you manage to protect your own mental health when working with this show? Because you had quite an intense process. You lived together for 2 weeks when you were bubbling together, when you were rehearsing, and then you had the 2 days filming. What did you do to protect yourself, basically? Naomi, do you want to tell us?
Yeah, so I think that naturally the group is very warm and very supportive of each other. So it wasn't a feeling that there was a lot of tension coming back from rehearsals into the house. Fortunately, it was naturally quite relaxed and we had our own space. We were lucky to have a really a large space in our Airbnb where we could sort of take time out, even in the garden, to have some time to ourselves. But also there were times where we were needing to rehearse in the evening. And so there was a kind of, you know, that intensity of the emotional level of the production when we were rehearsing in the kitchen in the evening because we needed to. And also I was painting self-harm scars on people's arms before bedtime and then they'd be wrapped up so that we could go straight into it in the morning. And so it was inevitable that the production would sort of seep into our whole mentality while we were there, so we couldn't completely let go. So I think it was just silly things like just watching silly television programs and laughing, listening to music, chatting about completely different things outside, but also having time to ourselves and just finding all sorts of ways to relax and to let the play leave us for a moment and to enjoy being together, because there are those moments of humor in the play. And so to find those relationships together also helps the play, rather than being stuck in this constant kind of tension which can easily arise from rehearsing a play in such an intense environment.
Amazing. And I think also that ensemble like quality really came across in your performance, because everything was so slick, relationships were really well defined as well. As an ensemble, I was wondering about the sort of physical theatre and sort of more, it seemed like devised elements. Valentina, did that come from the cast devising those through exercises, or was that something that you kind of sculpted as the director?
There was absolutely a really important side of physical action that the actors developed over the rehearsals. So we used to do a training every rehearsals before. We used to training before the recording in the theater. So it was a moment that you get inside the play, you remember who you are, and the relationship between the actors become real, mm-hmm. and not like all in one way, in 25 different ways. Mm-hmm. So it was absolutely a fundamental moment. And in plus, all the work that they have done at home by themselves, or take care about the costumes, run through in the evening after rehearsals, take care of the makeup. So they work properly as a production that mm-hmm. take care of everything, with absolutely the huge support of peers that make this possible.
Amazing. So we had a question that was, can you tell us about the creative development and any professional input into the storyline? How did the actors develop their characters? So I'm not sure if that was, is that any creative development as actors within the Peer Productions actor development scheme? So yeah, how did you develop your characters? Were there any sort of certain techniques you used? Liam,
I think kind of through the accelerated course, there was always kind of development as an actor, and in your actor training, it's something that was really helpful. But going into this, because it was so early on, we all worked together and come together collaboratively to find those things. And I think something that helped me, especially with my character of Matt, was really finding those objectives of why he does certain things. Because, you know, in one scene, we see him attack Chloe, and you've got to think, that's a really deep thing to do, but what is Matt doing that for? Why is he doing that? And inevitably it's to impress Hayley. And so finding those wants and that kind of reason to say these lines and do what Matt does really helped in terms of playing that character within the play.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And Naomi, I was really impressed by your portrayal of the mother. It's of the character who commits suicide, because I thought that must have been such a difficult character to play. How did you go about playing that character?
That was such a daunting and really intense experience to go into that whole speech. And it was really interesting that I had that monologue right after I'd been playing Chloe for about the last 10 minutes. And so it was sort of strange, because in a way it was helpful that I had Chloe on my mind as I went into it. So I literally had such a quick change, and it was Chloe and then her mum. But also I was worried that it would just be a blurred line between the two characters. And so I felt that I really needed to find something that is just about Sarah Foreman as a person. She's a person outside of what's happened to her daughter, and all of these kids see her as a grieving mother, which she is, and the mother of a dead child, of course, but she has other children, she has a job, she has a life before she was married and has children. So there's all of this stuff to her that it isn't seen. So I thought it was really helpful to have a grounding thought before I began that whole speech. Otherwise I could just be in a complete emotional mess the whole time. And of course it is emotional, but it has to have that truth and grounding. And also it's not an immediate thing that's happened. Her daughter died several months before. So the first line is, my name is Sarah Foreman. So I remember having to think to myself before I started it, like, right, let go of Chloe, which sort of in two senses, like let go of the character, but also as a mother, she's trying to cope with what's happened. And also to think, my name is Sarah Foreman, so this is who I am now. These kids see me as this woman from TV who's crying in interviews and talking about suicide, but I'm a lot more than that, and Chloe is as well. So that became something that grounded me and then sort of launched me into the monologue, because it was like, I'm here for a reason, and I'm here to prove that Chloe's more than that, and I'm more than that, and this is something that can happen to anyone, but I'm here to change it.
Fantastic. And Janet, you also played a lot of different characters. What did you do to create these characters? What worked for you?
A character that I actually really struggled to create was Bob, and that was right at the beginning in Matt's world. And that was really difficult for me because I had to really let go of the way I would present myself and really find a different way to present the character of Bob. I think I tried it about 3 or 4 different ways, and Valentina and Nina kind of looked at me and was like, look, Janet, this isn't working. Like, you need to stop trying to be cool. And I remember that was the phrasing, like, stop trying to be cool. And I was like, I didn't realize I was doing it, but that was what was holding me back. I felt like I had to present myself in a certain way, but at the end of the day, I'm an actor and I'm here to act. And I shouldn't be presenting myself. I should be doing my due diligence to present Bob. So really just letting go of how I should hold myself was really the key into like getting that character, which was the hardest character for me to play.
Amazing. And Bob was very funny. I loved the moment where I think it was Matt was in the cafe, and then he was with the lady that he liked, and then Bob as well, they sort of like slid your way in, and because you played Bob so seriously, that's why it was so funny. But humour was a really important part of this play, wasn't it? Why was it so important? Nina, you wanted it to be quite funny, didn't you? Why was that?
I mean, I think people are normally surprised, you know, it's a cheery little play about self-harm. And I think there is this idea that if someone is doing that, their entire life is about that, and that they are miserable all the time, and that just doesn't bear out in my experience. Mainly people do that because they struggle with processing their emotions and need an outlet, and they've chosen an unhealthy way. That doesn't mean they don't also have a really good time sometimes and have a lot of joy in their life. And it's also that the whole shape of the play is a circle, because we want to start the play saying these people survived. We see them happy, bubbly at a music festival, having a really great time. So we know they survived. So when Tash collapses on the floor, we know she's not dead because we've seen her. She's having a conversation like, yes, okay, it could all be set in heaven, but you know, that's generally not the way we're going. So it's really important. And also structurally, it's particularly with a kind of, I mean, Karen will tell you, a less forgiving Year 9 audience. If we went straight in with, I mean, the first very serious scene is Matt and Hayley. And if we start there, we haven't earned it. You know, because they like you, because you've made them laugh, they're more likely to listen. So we have to, there's a lot of humour early on, and then it's really strategic where we go back to humour, and where do we put those bitchy girls in Sophia's world, just to kind of give those moments of release. Otherwise it becomes very, very intense and very, very upsetting. And actually the play is about recovery, and it is about hope. So those things are really, really important. But yeah, there's a deliberately quite a lot of high energy funny sequence at the beginning to win the audience over, so that they are willing for us to take them there, because otherwise they're not coming.
And I think it was also it also really strikes me as a story about friendship and how to be a good friend, because you have so many examples all the way through of how to have really constructive, helpful conversations with your friends to help other people, or for them to help you. So I really hope that people really take a lot from that. We've had some more questions. So we've had, is the play different when it is performed live in a school, e.g. incorporating audience interaction?
No.
No.
The general answer. We sometimes make theatre like that, but we deliberately don't here. We are usually performing to 200 students in a school hall pre-pandemic, and we don't want to be having the debate and the discussion publicly with 200 people, because it's just too dangerous, because you end up getting disclosures at the wrong time. So the purpose of the play is to raise that discussion, but those discussions, I think Karen would probably agree, are more appropriate to have in smaller groups with staff that they can talk to afterwards, because we're in and we're out. So if we start forming bonds and giving advice on mental health issues, we've gone. That you know, we're a theatre company. It's not, our job is to start the debate, and we provide a lot of materials to help schools then workshop around it, but we don't do that ourselves, because naturally it means we'd end up with a lot of the young audience would end up disclosing to the young actors, and it's just not how we'd like to do it. So particularly for this topic, we wouldn't do that.
No. I remember from when I was part of peer productions, we could always tell when we'd really caught the attention of the audience, because they were really quiet. I remember once I can't remember what play we were doing, but a fire alarm went off and they all just went, whoa, because they were so sucked into what was going on. But has there been feedback from pupils who've watched the play, and what have they said? Maybe Karen, are you able to talk about the kind of responses that you've received from students who've watched the play?
Yeah, so what happens is that the students have the opportunity to actually go online and give some feedback on the production. And also we make sure that we get feedback from staff as well, you know, because quite often the students come down with their class teacher or with their tutor. So, and it's very much part of it, and I know that Nina and the team take that feedback really seriously. You know, the opinions and the thoughts of the young people is really important. You know, it is about education, isn't it? It's about that peer education, and that feedback also goes back into the school in terms of thinking about, okay, well, what issues has it highlighted for us, particularly around those issues around disclosures and things like that. So it's sharpened up our practice, both with safeguarding, but also with our curriculum as well, particularly with our PSHE curriculum. Because the play, as Nina mentioned earlier, it's been so well considered in terms of how it's been presented. You know, Nina mentioned about, you know, specific lines that have gone backwards and forwards about, you know, is this triggering? How is this going to work? So we know that the play is safe, but it's also given us cues about how we can deliver in schools. So the feedback is all around. You know, it's kind of cyclical. You know, and has kind of aided us to develop our support systems, but also our curriculum as well.
Amazing. And we also had another question. Do you intend to address parents with this play to raise awareness about the kids' issues that are often neglected? Do you think that's a useful thing, that maybe parents would like to watch Hidden and learn quite a lot about it?
I mean, it's not what it was designed for, although because I based a lot of it on true stories that we developed. I see someone asking me that. And often when we're gathering stories, we'll do that in quite a kind of group collaborative way, working with people directly affected by an issue. So when I wrote a play about teenage pregnancy, I worked with teen mums. I didn't do that for this play, because I thought getting a group of people who were all experiencing self-harm together was potentially a risky thing to do. So we put a call out, and it was very specific around people who had recovered from self-harm, who had not self-harmed for at least 3 years. And I did a number of interviews that then informed the text. So there was that real life part, and then there was also what was being reported by major charities, be that, you know, Bernardo's, Childline, etc. And so I'm gathering all of that information together. I've forgotten where we started, Christine. What I knew that was important to say, but what did you actually just ask me about? Oh, parents, there we go, parents, yeah.
Parents, yeah. I forgot that.
So it is designed, I'm there. Yeah, it is designed for teachers and for schools, but we have had parents look at the teacher's pack and use the teacher's pack with their kids and say to me, oh, we found that really helpful. I think raising awareness, yeah, of course, it would be fantastic. And I suppose now that we have this digital version, there's probably an opportunity for parents to access. That's something we really need to think about.
Yeah, completely. And I wanted to ask the cast, as young people at the start of your creative and acting careers, how do you feel about peer education, the fact that you are really positively affecting other young people's lives? Liam, I see you've unmuted. Would you like to?
Yes, I think one thing that I've learned this year is, in terms of my craft and art, is that I really want to become a contemporary theatre artist who makes theatre that affects lives and affects audiences. And I mean, this is kind of a goal that's further down the line, past drama school, past all that. But to do it within the first year of really establishing that and creating something that I know will now go on to help as many people as possible is something that's really rewarding and something that I'm really proud of.
Amazing. And you don't need to do that in years ahead. You can do that now. You're already doing it. So it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Molly, how do you feel about being a peer educator to other young people?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, what Liam said, I definitely agree with it. It's just quite rewarding in a sense, knowing that you're helping others, and just the fact that sort of we're able to, in a way, teach about this topic through theatre is just amazing, because I know that sometimes this sort of thing is taught in schools just in a lesson coming from the teacher that they've seen every day, and it can get quite boring in a sense and not engaging. So then when we're able to bring this along, and it just gets students to sort of listen more and to just engage with us more, it's nice. Sort of, it's a good feeling that we're able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
making a difference. It feels, yeah, good, great. Grace, how do you feel about it?
Much like everyone else, I think it's brilliant, and I definitely think that when I was in school it would have been brilliant sort of teaching, because I remember having sort of lessons being taught about difficult topics, and just if you had someone that you could relate with, because they're also a young person like you are, I think that it would have been more like engaging, like Molly said. And so I think that it's brilliant that we can, as young people, we can bring it to young people and just be more relatable and hopefully get them to engage more with us.
Amazing. The magic of theatre. Very good. We have had some other questions. For young actors, how has the pandemic affected the mental health of young people? Would anyone like to answer that? How has it been living in this crazy year? Liam?
I can answer I think the first thing is kind of, you've got to realise that mental health affects everyone. It's a little bit like happiness. You're not always happy, so your mental health can fluctuate. And I think for me, being locked inside, especially when all of us are such creative people and we work with such an ensemble within the craft we do, being stuck inside and not really having anywhere to go out and that kind of stuff, it does take a toll. And I know for me, it was really challenging not to kind of just get stuck in kind of the same slumber kind of thing, like just wake up, stay in bed all day and then go back to sleep. Like, it was really tough to find that kind of every day get up and go. And I think that's one thing that was really difficult.
Completely. And I always find that if you ground your something in something you're really passionate about, like theatre, like making something creative, it always sparks a new sort of burst of energy. Another question that I had was that we, in the production, we do see the self-harm scars that you said that you made of makeup the night before for the next day. What was the reason for showing these in the film?
I mean, that was something we talked about quite a lot, and we've gone back and forth over the years, because to be honest, in a school situation, when you've got a very large audience, whether you put it there or not, most of the audience probably can't see whether it's there or not, just because of the proxemics of the space. And I suppose there'd be an element of cognitive dissonance if there was nothing there and he's saying, I can see all of these scars, and they're not there. But at the same time, I was really concerned that it wouldn't be gratuitous and that it wouldn't be sensational. So it's one of the few times we had an amazing professional director for film working for us, and it's about one of the only stipulations that I made was that we really don't want to be kind of zooming in on Caitlin's arms when she's playing Hayley. Like, that's not the focus. We see them, but it's not really up close, and there's no moment where we're kind of as brilliant as, and Naomi turned out to be a brilliant makeup artist, because obviously part of the pandemic is you can't get in a professional makeup artist. We had to teach ourselves how to do it, and we had a distanced tutorial from an ex-student who was in the original production and is now a makeup artist. Brilliant. But so we didn't want to be coming in close and being really gratuitous, but we wanted to acknowledge that it was there, and kind of it was incidentally there, because actually that is the reality that many young people are living with. And often this kind of fear of triggering, this fear of, oh my God, what if young people see this? Young people are already seeing this. You know, you look on the internet, you look at, you know, TikTok, you look at YouTube, this is already here in dramas, and what we're showing them is really mild in comparison to what they are able to access, and they are already talking about this. So I would rather they were talking about this in a context that is positive and that does encourage getting help and support and all of those things, rather than behind closed doors, because the idea that young people aren't talking about this is absolute rubbish, because they are.
And I think also it's just really important that, say, if you are hiding something like that, identifying that in another person, I think makes it a less shameful thing to be holding as a secret. I feel like you're more likely to share it with someone in confidence and get that support and help that it needs. So that's why I thought it was great that you do see the reality of the scars. So going on from that, so I wanted to ask Valentina about the music. What inspired the music in the production?
We decided to create with a music producer called Federico Maffei 3 words, so evocative of the remembers of the main characters. And this was really important to bring the actors inside the situation, because they remember about what's happened. And this is fundamental to create a kind of distance and to have a different point of view that is not realistic. And so it's not naturalistic, it's practically theatrical. And this was one of our main rules. So the music helped to bring them in these words. And the research that we have done was something evocative, distortion, emotional, really connect with emotion, but without become heavy. Maintain the main things that is so attractive for me in the script of Nina, this kind of lightness that allowed people to understand and to don't be scared, but to enjoy what the script is talking about.
I found it really interesting working with Valentina, because there was a moment where we were talking about where she was going to make music, and we just both spontaneously said, obviously there'll be no music in Chloe's mum's speech. And then we never really discussed that again, but we both went, well, obviously we wouldn't put it there. And I thought about that afterwards, and was like, we were so on the same wavelength about that. And we didn't want the kind of, we knew the words were enough there. I presume that's why we both said it. I don't know, I'm speaking for you, that sort of underscoring this particular moment would feel wrong, you know.
I also felt like the music almost felt like memory as well. Like it was sort of thinking back to those times, or digging into the backs of their brains for these things that shaped them to where they were at that point. We've had some really nice comments in the chat box, which are very nice to read. So Helen has said, so many of these teenage issues are only covered in American Netflix dramas, so having something British and theatre-based and so real is excellent, and it's really relatable for kids in our schools. So that is really, really nice to read. So we've got about a few minutes left. So if you do have any more questions, we probably have room for like one or two. But otherwise, I did want to ask, what was the biggest challenge that you faced during the show and maybe overcame and learned from? Who would like to start us off?
I would just say ending up filming during the second lockdown resulted in a number of venues having to pull out. So we were very, very grateful last minute to be able to work with the Camberley Theatre, because many venues, obviously it's really hard for our industry. So when the second lockdown happened, people were furloughing their staff, venues were closing. But luckily, because they're a council venue, they'd redeployed their staff, so we were able to work with them last minute. That was my biggest headache, because there was a point at which everything was set except for where we were going to do it, and that was quite scary.
Peer Productions is a tour de force of ambition and determination, so I'm sure at the time I would have had no doubt that you would have got it done. Caitlin, what was your biggest challenge with this show?
I think for me it was just fully letting go and, you know, not worrying about what I look like, and just, you know, having fun and appreciating the moment that we got given. And, you know, it wasn't an ideal situation being in a lockdown whilst having to do this, but still, you know, being very grateful for the fact that we still got to make an amazing piece of art, and, you know, just enjoy it and just not worry too much about everything else that's going on.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it was probably a really nice distraction from the world everything that was going on in the world at the time. Janet, what was your biggest challenge, do you think, that you managed to overcome or face?
Other than like playing Bob, which was really hard. One part for me was learning space on the stage. Like, I had a few conversations with Valentina and she's like, Janet, you're not considering your audience. Like, whilst there might not be anybody there, you still have to make sure you're angling yourself in the right way. And it's just things that I'd never been taught, and I'd never had the chance to consider, like the way you angle yourself, your body on the stage, how you project to an audience even though there's nobody there. So that was really challenging to wrap my head around.
Yeah, of course, especially with the cameras as well. That must have been a lot going on. Naomi, do you have a challenge that you felt like you faced?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it was towards the end of the play. By the time we came to performing it, I had quite a quick succession of highly emotional scenes. So there was the last time we see Chloe, and then there was Chloe's mum, and then there was Tash's mum finding Tash collapse, and it was all just such a high level. So I just finished the Chloe's mum speech, and I kind of want to but I can't, because, you know, 2 minutes later I'm in there fighting Tash and have to be up here again. And so it was and so that Tash's mum scene, for some reason, was so difficult because it comes with the shock of finding her, whereas Chloe's mum was so much more measured and there'd been time to process it. So that was definitely my biggest challenge, and I remained quite worried about that scene for a long time while we were filming. But I had a lot of support with Valentina for that, into working with the body and movement and kind of not being too much in my own head about it, which is very tempting for me. So it was about finding the breath and the movement, and we did a lot of movement exercises like throwing the stick. The stick was finally mentioned because we use the stick all the time, like to throw between each other, and it was like passing the line on, and it was all very like just to get us into a physical way of seeing and feeling the play. So I think that all of that work that we did in rehearsal was what really helped me to overcome that challenge, and finally I did enjoy doing the scene.
And I must say, Nina, I think this play is a fantastic acting challenge and really great for acting training, because it is a challenge going from all those different characters and playing all these different emotions, but I think you guys did an absolute stellar job, and you should be so proud of yourself, and I can't wait to hear hopefully about all the feedback that you get from the students when it goes out to schools. I'd like to finish off with a really nice comment that we just got. So Julie just said, I thought the production was fantastic and I wish my children and their friends had been able to see it when at school. Well done to everyone. I was very impressed with it. The play, the direction and the fantastic acting. So Nina, would you just quickly remind everyone how they can get Hidden into their schools in front of their students, please, before we end?
Yes, thank you, Christine. There is a link on our website at the top where you go to Hidden, and all of the information you need is there. There's links to the live streams. We are only, the schools who would normally receive this through generous funding from a range of different trusts and foundations will still receive this for free. Schools who are basically out further away from us, who we don't have that existing relationship, can buy in this resource. We've tried to make it as accessible as possible, although it's quite expensive to make. So we have tried to make it as accessible as possible. So the smallest package is £55, and that's if you're going to show it to one class, and you can pause that 3 times. And with each of the different streaming packages that are of different sizes, you get the full teachers pack, which is which we worked with a number of teachers on, and there's 8 drama lessons for Key Stage 3, 8 for Key Stage 4, and 8 PSHE lessons, as well as a lot of stuff for whole school development. And there's even an interactive student guide. So you get quite a lot of bang for your buck, and it's just a case of booking through the same website people booked through today, but all of that information is on our website.
Oh, amazing. And with that, I think it's time to say goodbye. So thank you so much to everyone who tuned in today to watch the premiere of Hidden. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to our fantastic cast, to Nina, to Karen, to Valentina. Thank you for having me. It was so nice to talk to you about Hidden. So yeah, thank you so much. Maybe we'll do a wave. Yeah.